What are you doing in there? She is communicating.
The bruise circling Sophia's wrist was too precise to be an accident. Luca Moretti saw it when her blanket slipped beneath the amber light of the bedside lamp. For dark marks stained her skin above the pulse, each no wider than a fingertip. Sophia sat motionless in her wheelchair, her disabled body supported by cream-colored cushions, while the oxygen machine beside her released its steady mechanical sigh. Luca touched the bruise with the back of one knuckle. Her hand jerked away. "Who did this?" His voice was quiet enough to make the room feel colder. Sophia's lips parted, but only a strained breath emerged. Her eyes moved toward the open doorway, where footsteps whispered across polished marble and then disappeared. Luca rose without calling the household staff. In his world, accusations warned the guilty. Silence gave them rope. Before midnight, 3 technicians entered through the service garage carrying black cases beneath gray maintenance coats. Luca surrendered no names, no suspicions, and no access to his central security network. He watched as pinhole cameras vanished inside smoke detectors, carved molding, and the brass base of a corridor lamp. One faced Sophia's bed. Another covered the medicine cabinet. A third watched the hall outside her room. Installing them meant breaking the one promise he had made after her accident, that she would never again be treated like property under surveillance. Yet the bruises had changed the price of privacy. If someone inside his house was hurting her, trust had already become a weapon. By 1:17 a.m., the mansion lay silent beneath pools of muted gold. The air in Luca's private office smelled of leather, cedar, and cooling espresso. 9 screens cast a pale blue sheen across his face as servants finished their duties and withdrew. On the center feed, Sophia slept beneath a white blanket. Her breathing machine pulsed softly. Nothing moved except the curtains stirring above the radiator. Then Amara entered. She wore the same charcoal maid's uniform she had worn at dinner, its cuffs neatly folded above her wrists. In one hand, she carried a small cloth bag. She closed the door without turning on the overhead light, leaving only the bedside lamp to sharpen her shadow across the floor. Luca leaned closer. Amara checked the hallway through the narrow opening. Her gaze passed directly beneath the hidden camera. Then she stepped inside and turned the lock. The click reached Luca through the monitor, small, metallic, final. Sophia's eyes opened immediately. She had not been asleep. Amara placed the cloth bag beside the bed, crossed to the breathing machine, and rested 2 fingers against its controls. Luca's hand moved toward the pistol beneath his desk, then stopped. Calling his guards would protect Sophia quickly, but it would also destroy his only chance to learn what had been happening beyond his sight. On screen, Amara bent close to Sophia and whispered something the microphone could not catch. Sophia did not recoil. Instead, her fingers twitched against the blanket. Amara looked toward the locked door, then back at the machine. Luca magnified the image until silver pixels trembled around her hand. He had installed the cameras to identify whoever had marked his sister's skin. On the first night, the woman he least suspected had sealed herself inside Sophia's room, and reached for the one machine keeping her alive. A soft mechanical hiss filled Sophia's bedroom, steady as the tide against a dark shore. Blue light from the breathing machine washed over the silver spoon protruding from Amara's cloth bag, while rain whispered against the tall windows. On Luca's monitor, Amara's fingers closed around the machine's power control. One turn. The hiss stopped. Luca's hand tightened beneath the desk. Every instinct built by years of betrayal demanded that he draw his pistol, call the guards, break down the locked door. Instead, he pressed the intercom switch beside the monitor and silenced the security channel before anyone else could notice the machine's warning light. For the first time in his own house, Luca Moretti chose not to command. He chose to watch. Inside the bedroom, silence became physical. Sophia's lips parted. Her chest rose shallowly beneath the ivory blanket, and the tendons in her neck pulled tight with each breath. Amara kept one hand near the controls, her eyes fixed on Sophia's face rather than the door. "Stay with me," she whispered. Her voice barely disturbed the warm air. "You decide when we stop." Those words struck Luca harder than a threat. No one spoke to Sophia about decisions. Her doctors gave instructions. Her nurses followed schedules. Luca himself ordered the entire mansion to bend around her condition, yet somehow every act of protection had made his sister less visible. Amara moved to Sophia's right side and reached for the leather restraint around her wrist. The fastening opened with a dry click. Then the second restraint came loose. Red pressure marks crossed Sophia's pale skin beneath the bruising Luca had discovered. Her freed hand dropped against the sheet, trembling. Amara did not catch it. She waited until Sophia lifted it herself. The movement took several seconds. Sweat shone along Sophia's hairline. The room's antique clock counted each one with a brass-edged tick. Luca leaned toward the monitor until its cold light sharpened every line of his face. Amara took the silver spoon from the bag. Its polished bowl flashed beneath the bedside lamp. She wrapped Sophia's unsteady fingers around the handle and curled them closed one by one. To Luca, the sequence formed a terrible picture: the breathing machine disabled, the restraints removed, a metal object placed into the hand of a woman unable to cry out clearly. One command from him would bring 6 armed men through that door. 1 second of hesitation could cost Sophia her life. Yet Sophia was not pulling away. Her eyes followed Amara with a fierce concentration Luca had not seen in months. Amara drew a water glass across the walnut table and positioned it beside Sophia's hand. "Not strength," she said softly. "Control." Sophia tried to raise the spoon. It slipped and struck the glass. Ting. The small sound traveled through the hidden microphone and rang from Luca's speakers. Amara immediately reached for the machine, restoring one short breath of assisted air before switching it off again. The gesture was measured, not careless. Sophia blinked once, then tightened her grip. Ting. A second strike. The glass quivered, scattering blue reflections across the wall. Luca's thumb hovered over the alarm button. Amara lowered her face until Sophia could see her clearly. "Again," she whispered. "Show me you're still in there." Sophia dragged in a thin breath and lifted the spoon for a third time. Ting. Amara's eyes glistened, but her hands remained steady. Luca removed his thumb from the alarm. He locked the security feed so no guard could enter without his authorization, wagering Sophia's safety, and his own judgment, on the woman inside that room. Then Amara placed the glass closer and asked the question that turned the silver spoon into something more dangerous than any weapon in the mansion. "Can you tell me who you're afraid of?" Sophia's fingers tightened around the handle. The room waited for her answer. 3 silver notes lingered in the blue-lit room, each one thinner than the hum of the hidden cameras. Against Sophia's palm, the spoon trembled while condensation slid down the glass and darkened the linen beneath it. Amara did not repeat her question. Instead, she drew a small card from the cloth bag and placed it beside Sophia's motionless leg. 3 words had been written across it in thick black ink: yes. No. Letters. "You choose," Amara whispered. "Not me." Sophia's eyes shifted toward the last word. Amara turned the card over. On the back, the alphabet had been divided into numbered groups. One tap selected a row. The next tap selected a letter. It was slow, imperfect, and entirely Sophia's. In the security room, cold light sharpened Luca's reflection across 6 monitors. He understood now that the controlled pauses in the breathing machine had not been cruelty. Without its mechanical pressure forcing Sophia's chest into a fixed rhythm, Amara could distinguish intentional movement from involuntary spasms. She had removed the restraints because the leather stole the fraction of motion Sophia still possessed. The spoon was not a weapon. It was a voice. Amara restored the airflow, waited until Sophia's breathing settled, then touched the first row on the card. Whenever you're ready. The spoon rose less than an inch. Ting. Pause. Ting. Amara marked the selection with a pencil. Sophia's wrist sagged against the sheet, but when Amara reached to help, Sophia blinked hard and pulled her hand away. The refusal was small. It changed the balance of the room. Amara sat back. All right. Your hand. Your words. Sophia tried again. Metal struck glass in uneven clusters, separated by long breaths and the faint rubbery scent of the oxygen tubing warming beneath the bedside lamp. Luca leaned closer to the screen. One letter appeared on Amara's card, then another. D-O-N'. T. The mansion remained quiet around him, sealed in marble and midnight, while his sister spent nearly 4 minutes forcing a single word into existence. Amara never completed it for her. She only repositioned the glass when Sophia's fingers could no longer reach. The next word came faster. T-R-U-S-T. Luca's jaw tightened. On the third word, Sophia missed twice. The spoon scraped the rim with a dry metallic hiss. Sweat shone along her hairline, and the pulse at her throat fluttered above the white collar of her nightgown. Amara reached toward the breathing controls, but Sophia struck the glass once, sharp, deliberate. No. Her eyes fixed on the card. D-O-C-T-O-R. Amara's pencil stopped. Don't trust the doctor, she read softly. From the monitor speakers, the sentence crossed the security room like a blade drawn from velvet. Luca's hand moved to the encrypted phone beside the console. One command would summon his guards. Another would alert the physician who had supervised every prescription, every restraint, every explanation of Sophia's decline. His thumb touched neither option. Instead, Luca erased the automatic security notification triggered when the breathing machine had been switched off. Then he silenced the entire channel until dawn. It was the first time he had deliberately concealed a breach inside his own house. On screen, Amara placed the spoon back into Sophia's palm. Can you tell me which doctor? Sophia did not look at the card. Her gaze lifted past Amara toward the tiny camera embedded in the molding, as if she had known all along that someone might be watching. The spoon touched the glass 3 times. Then Sophia formed the answer with her lips, soundless, unmistakable. Vale. Luca rose from his chair, but he did not enter the bedroom. He locked the recording in a private archive, removed every guard from the east hallway, and gave Amara the one thing no outsider had ever received in the Moretti mansion, time beyond his control. Downstairs, the grandfather clock struck 2. Upstairs, Amara opened a fresh page, and Sophia tightened her fingers around the spoon. By sunrise, Dr. Adrian Vale would return to examine a patient he believed could not speak, and Luca had decided to let him keep believing it. The antiseptic scent reached the east corridor before the grandfather clock finished striking 7. Morning light cut through the frosted windows, pale and cold against the black marble floor, as Dr. Adrian Vale entered with a leather medical case swinging beside his charcoal overcoat. Luca waited near Sophia's doorway, one hand resting against the carved frame. Amara stood inside, smoothing the linen across Sophia's knees while the breathing machine released its measured hiss. Vale checked the monitor first. Then the tubing. His fingers stopped over the dosage pump. Who changed the schedule? Amara turned from the bed. I did. Vale's gaze settled on the unlocked leather restraints and the faint color in Sophia's face. You had no authority. She was barely conscious for 14 hours a day. The doctor opened his case, and metal instruments clicked against glass. Mr. Moretti, this woman interfered with respiratory support and withheld prescribed medication. Remove her from the house. Luca gave no answer. From the hidden control room 2 floors below, the cameras continued recording every angle, the tremor in Sophia's fingers, the stiffness in Vale's jaw, the folded papers Amara drew from beneath her apron. She placed them on the walnut table. Pharmacy receipts. Medication logs. Photographs of labeled vials. Each page carried a date, dosage, and time in her precise handwriting. The pump records 1 dose, Amara said. The discarded vials show 2. Vale did not touch the records. A maid counting bottles is not a medical opinion. A suspended nurse can still count. The words hardened the room. Even the machine's soft hiss seemed louder. Luca's eyes shifted to her, but Amara kept hers on Vale. I trained in critical care, she continued. My license was suspended after I refused to falsify a patient chart. I know what prolonged sedation does, and I know Sophia has received more than you prescribed on paper. Vale closed his medical case with a sharp snap. Then you have just admitted to practicing without a license. Sophia's spoon lay hidden beneath the blanket, pressed into her palm. Her wrist moved once, but Amara placed no words in her mouth. She simply stepped between the doctor and the dosage pump. Vale faced Luca. Fire her now, or I notify the state board and your household insurers. Every unauthorized intervention becomes your liability. Luca lifted one of the medication sheets. The paper felt thin between his fingers, the danger behind it did not. Explain the missing vials. Vale's expression barely shifted. He reached into his coat and removed a slim black drive. Before you decide how publicly you want this conversation to continue, remember what I keep for your family. He set it beside the records. The drive contained copies of treatment ledgers Vale had used for years to disguise Moretti payments, wounded associates, and operations that had never entered a hospital database. Exposing the doctor without controlling those files could bring investigators through every Moretti door. Amara understood the silence before Luca spoke. Leave Sophia's room, he told Vale. Amara remains until noon. It was not victory. It was 6 hours bought with the threat of prison hanging over all 3 of them. Vale pulled on his gloves, the leather creaking in the chilled air. At the threshold, he glanced toward Amara. At noon, she goes, or those records do. The door shut behind him. On the table, the black drive rested beside proof that Sophia had been drugged into silence, and the clock downstairs began measuring the price of every minute Luca allowed Amara to stay. A brass key turned slowly beneath the pale morning light, its teeth scraping against the lockbox in Luca's private study. Beyond the windows, rain whispered against the glass, while the grandfather clock downstairs consumed another minute of Amara's 6 remaining hours. Luca opened the steel door. Inside hung the master key to Sophia's medication room, the one object no doctor, nurse, or servant had ever controlled without his permission. He removed it and walked back into the east corridor, where the air smelled of antiseptic and cold stone. Amara stood beside Sophia's wheelchair, checking the breathing tube for condensation. Beneath the blanket, Sophia's fingers remained curled around the silver spoon. Luca held out the key. The pharmacy room is yours. Amara did not reach for it. The key swayed between them, catching a narrow blade of light. Vale's schedule kept her quiet, Luca said. You decide what she receives now. Amara's eyes moved from the key to Sophia. If I take control, she stays awake. That is why I'm giving it to you. No, her voice was low but firm. You're giving it to me because you want answers. Luca's hand stopped moving. The breathing machine released a soft mechanical sigh. Amara stepped closer, the cotton cuff of her uniform brushing the wheelchair's leather armrest. Awake is not the same as safe. Memory can return through sound, pressure, even a familiar smell. If the accident comes back too quickly, her breathing may become unstable. She may lose the progress she fought for last night. Sophia struck the spoon once beneath the blanket. A faint metallic note. Both of them looked down. She struck it again, then dragged the spoon toward the alphabet card resting beside her thigh. Amara followed each painful movement as Sophia selected 2 words. Want. No. The room held still around them. Luca lowered himself until he was level with his sister. For years, every decision had been made above her, by doctors, guards, and a brother who called control protection. Now Sophia's gaze stayed fixed on the key in his palm. "If you remember," Luca said, "you may learn something about this family that cannot be put back in darkness." Sophia tapped the spoon against the word yes. Luca stood and placed the key in Amara's hand. Her fingers closed around the cold brass, but she did not thank him. She crossed the corridor, unlocked the medication room, and removed Vale's prepared syringe tray from the refrigerator. The compressor hummed in the blue-white light. One by one, she sealed the syringes inside a clear evidence bag, wrote the time across the label, and locked them away. Then she measured a reduced dose from an unopened vial, recording every fraction in ink while Luca watched. The choice was no longer hidden behind a camera. It belonged to all three of them. Minutes later, Sophia sat upright beside the rain-streaked window, fully alert, the silver spoon balanced in her hand. Amara placed 3 objects on the table, a strip of black leather, a cedar matchbox, and a photograph of the Moretti garage taken before the crash. "We stop the moment you ask," she said. Sophia ignored the photograph. Her hand moved toward the matchbox. The dry cedar scent reached her before her fingers touched it. Her breathing changed. Not faster, shallower. The spoon slipped, struck the glass twice, then once. Amara read the pattern and turned toward Luca. "She remembers the garage." Luca moved closer, but Sophia's spoon rang again, harder this time. She pointed past the photograph to the reflection in its polished frame, directly at her brother. The clock downstairs struck 7. Sophia began spelling the first name from the night of the accident, and Luca realized she was not asking whether he could bear the truth. She was deciding whether he deserved to hear it. Red light spilled across the carpet as the mansion's security panel shifted from green to lockdown. A second later, fists struck the medication room door, sharp and official, while cold morning air poured through the open transom. Luca reached beneath his jacket. Amara caught his wrist. "Not here," she whispered. "Not in front of Sophia." The door opened before he answered. 2 county detectives entered with a warrant, followed by a medical board investigator carrying a clear evidence case. No weapons were raised. None were needed. Inside the case lay Vale's prepared syringes, the same ones Amara had sealed away less than an hour earlier, alongside prescription labels bearing her suspended license number. "Amara," the investigator said, "you're under arrest for practicing medicine without a license, tampering with prescribed treatment, and unlawful possession of controlled medication." The room smelled of cedar and antiseptic. Sophia's spoon scraped frantically against the glass, but Amara stepped between her wheelchair and the strangers, blocking their view of the alphabet card. Luca read the warrant. The listed seizure time was 6:40 a.m., 20 minutes before Amara had placed the syringes in the cabinet. Vale had prepared the trap in advance. "Those medications belong to this house," Luca said, his voice flat enough to chill the room. "Then you may explain that downtown," one detective replied. Amara could have ended it with 4 words, "Sophia can communicate now." The recordings, the dosage exercise, and Sophia's testimony could prove why she had altered the treatment. But they would also tell Vale that his patient was alert, remembering, and capable of naming him. Amara looked toward the dark lens above the bookcase. She knew Luca was preserving everything it saw. Then she closed the cabinet herself and placed its key in the investigator's palm. "I adjusted the dosage," she said. Luca turned sharply. "Amara. No one else authorized it." The handcuffs clicked around her wrists, hard steel against dark skin. Sophia struck the glass once, paused, then struck it again and again, refusing to stop. Amara knelt despite the detective's grip. The carpet pressed rough beneath her knees. "Stay awake only if you choose to," she told Sophia. "You belong to yourself." Sophia's fingers closed around the spoon. This time, she gave one deliberate tap, "Yes." The detectives pulled Amara upright. At the doorway, the medical board investigator unfolded a second document. Her pending appeal for reinstatement had been suspended indefinitely. The nursing career she had spent years trying to reclaim disappeared beneath a blue government seal. Still, she did not look at the paper. She looked at Luca. If you use the recording to clear me now, Vale learns what she can do. For once, Luca Moretti had no order that could protect both women. Amara was led across the marble foyer as rain ticked against the tall windows. Her maid's apron remained folded over a chair upstairs, her keys were gone, her position terminated the moment the arrest became official, and the iron doors closed behind her with a sound that traveled through the entire house. Back in Sophia's room, the breathing machine released a soft mechanical sigh. Luca stood before the monitor where Amara's empty chair remained framed in gray morning light. Then the silver spoon rang from behind him, not a plea, but a measured sequence. Sophia pointed to the saved footage and began tapping faster, demanding that her brother choose what Amara had sacrificed her future to protect. By noon, Vale would expect silence. Now Luca had to decide how much of his own life he was willing to lose before that silence became permanent. Rainwater crawled down the black windows while the silver spoon struck the bedside rail in sharp, deliberate beats. 3 taps. A pause. 2 more. Across the room, the security monitors washed Luca's face in cold blue light, and the air carried the sterile scent of alcohol from the medication cart Amara had left behind. Sophia pointed at the saved footage, then at the alphabet card beneath her rigid fingers. This time, Luca did not ask her to slow down. He pulled Amara's chair beside the bed, opened every archived camera feed, and placed a legal pad under his hand. Sophia tapped. Luca translated. Hide. File. Garage. The garage recording from the night of Sophia's accident had been partially erased, but the mansion's cameras had preserved fragments from adjoining corridors. At 11:43 p.m., Sophia entered the accounting room carrying a black ledger. At 11:47, she photographed pages listing payments from Moretti medical accounts to shell companies controlled by Adrian Vale. Another feed showed her crossing the service hall with her phone raised, recording Vale's voice through a half-open door. The audio crackled beneath the hum of an ice machine. The rival families paid for schedules, Vale said. I gave them routes, names, everything they needed. Luca froze the image. Vale had not merely stolen from the Morettis. He had sold their movements to their enemies. Sophia's spoon struck once, hard enough to leave a pale crescent in her palm. The accident, Luca said. She tapped no. Then she spelled silence. The cedar scent from the garage had not come from a crashing vehicle. It came from the wooden storage cabinet where Vale had cornered her after discovering what she knew. Luca advanced the footage frame by frame. Vale entered through the east door carrying a medical case. Minutes later, he emerged alone, adjusting one cuff. The camera never showed the assault, but the timeline did not need to. Sophia had escaped the garage disoriented, heavily sedated, and collapsed behind the wheel before the car rolled into a stone barrier. Vale had not tried to kill her. Death would have triggered questions. Disability, dependency, and controlled medication had given him something more useful, a living witness everyone believed could no longer speak. Luca's pen stopped moving. The bruises on Sophia's wrists returned to the screen in enlarged stills, small circles layered beneath fading yellow skin, evenly spaced along the veins. Needle marks. Repeated injections. Not fingers. Not restraints applied by Amara. Every suspicion that had placed cameras over Sophia's bed now pointed toward the doctor trusted to stand beside it. Sophia tapped again and directed Luca to footage from 3 nights earlier. Amara was visible under the dim bedside lamp, comparing Sophia's bruises with the photographed vials, then turning each label toward the camera before hiding the images inside the medication log. She had known someone might need proof after she was gone. A digital clock changed to 11:31 a.m. Vale's deadline was 29 minutes away. Luca copied the recordings, medication timestamps, and Sophia's translated statement onto 3 encrypted drives. One went into his coat. One entered the mansion's remote evidence vault. The third he placed in Sophia's open hand. Her fingers closed around it beside the spoon. Then Luca lifted the secure phone Vale had used to control him and activated the line. "Adrian," he said, his voice low and level, "come collect your files at noon." Silence breathed through the receiver. Luca looked at Sophia, and she struck the rail once. "Yes. But understand this," he continued. "You are no longer negotiating with a man who doubts his sister." The balance of power had turned, but beyond the rain-dark gates, the first unmarked car was already taking position. At 11:58, the mansion's brass clock released 2 dry clicks, and the security monitors flashed beneath the cold blue light of the control room. Luca stood before the central camera with an encrypted drive between his fingers. Sophia waited beside him in her wheelchair, the silver spoon resting across her palm. "Send everything," she spelled on the alphabet card. Luca pressed the key. The footage moved beyond Moretti control, to federal investigators, the medical board, Amara's attorney, and 3 newsrooms, along with medication logs and the financial records Vale had used as a leash. Years of hidden accounts became evidence in seconds. Luca's empire was no longer protected by silence. Neither was Luca. At noon, Dr. Adrian Vale entered the marble foyer carrying a slim leather case. 2 detectives followed through another door with Amara between them, her wrists cuffed, her dark uniform creased from detention. Vale's smile vanished when the wall screens illuminated. There was Sophia in the garage. Vale beside her with a syringe. There were Amara's recordings of labeled vials, untouched timestamps, and needle marks magnified beneath clinical white light. Luca stepped into the open, where every camera could see his face. "Amara's arrest was built on planted evidence," he said. "Vale drugged my sister, stole from our accounts, and sold protected information. The original files have been released." One detective unlocked Amara's cuffs. The other turned toward Vale. Then the mansion alarms screamed. Red light washed over the marble. On the security grid, 3 masked men climbed from the unmarked car beyond the rain-dark gates, while a 4th cut power to the eastern wing. Vale lunged toward the foyer exit. The detective seized him, but Luca reached inside his coat as gunfire cracked against the reinforced front doors. "Don't," Amara said. Her voice cut through the siren. She crossed to the console, fingers moving over the controls Luca had once used to watch her. Steel shutters slammed over the lower windows. Magnetic locks sealed the east corridor, trapping 2 intruders between security doors without a shot fired. Amara rotated the exterior cameras, found the 3rd man beneath the cedar overhang, and activated the floodlights. White glare burst across the wet courtyard. "West Passage," she ordered. "Move Sophia now." Luca reached for his sister's wheelchair, but Sophia struck the spoon twice and pointed to Amara. Her choice. Amara took the handles and guided her through the concealed service passage as smoke from a shattered light fixture sharpened the air. Behind them, Luca remained with the detectives, preserving the open transmission while Vale shouted that Moretti would lose everything. "Maybe," Luca said, placing his weapon on the floor where the cameras could record it. "But you don't get to hide behind what I was." Amara watched the security feed from the shelter room. One intruder moved toward Luca through the library. She locked the inner door, triggered the fire barrier, and redirected the detectives through the adjoining hall. Seconds later, the man dropped his weapon under their commands. The sirens softened. Rain tapped the steel shutters. Vale was led away in cuffs, and an attorney's voice confirmed through the console that Amara's charges had been withdrawn pending formal dismissal. Yet another message appeared beneath it. Federal agents were approaching with warrants for Luca and the Moretti records. Sophia placed the encrypted drive back into her brother's hand. This time, Luca did not close his fingers around it. He gave it to Amara. Footsteps gathered beyond the sealed door, and Luca turned toward them without reaching for a weapon. "When they come in," he said, "make sure the cameras stay on." Amara held his gaze, her hands steady above the controls. The system built to expose a hidden abuser was now the only witness standing between Luca Moretti and the justice he had chosen for himself. Cold white light spilled across the marble foyer as the federal agents entered, their wet shoes whispering over the floor. The air carried rain, gun oil, and the faint medicinal scent still clinging to the mansion. Luca stood beneath the nearest camera with both hands visible. Amara remained at the security console, the encrypted drive resting beside her steady fingers. "Recording to 3 external servers," she said. "No one can erase what happens here." The lead agent opened the warrant. Luca did not call an attorney or summon what remained of his men. Instead, he faced the black glass dome overhead and identified himself. Then he admitted that the Moretti records were authentic, accepted responsibility for the crimes bearing his authorization, and refused to trade Amara's testimony or Sophia's safety for leniency. For years, cameras had been instruments of suspicion to him, cold eyes meant to catch betrayal before it reached his door. Now he chose to stand inside their gaze with nothing concealed. A soft metallic tap crossed the foyer. Sophia sat near the cedar-paneled wall, the silver spoon poised above her alphabet card. Amara moved toward her, but Sophia raised one finger, asking for time. Tap by tap, she formed the words herself. Luca told the truth. Then she shifted the card and continued. Amara gave me my voice. The room went silent. Luca looked toward the woman he had once watched as a possible killer. On the monitors, the archived images moved without sound, Amara loosening Sophia's restraints, Amara measuring medication beneath the blue nightlight, Amara placing the spoon into an unresponsive hand and waiting without forcing it, Amara surrendering to detectives while Sophia tapped yes behind her. None of those images showed a servant taking control of a helpless woman. They showed a trained caregiver returning control to someone from whom it had been stolen. Luca crossed the foyer and stopped before Amara. The agents waited behind him, handcuffs catching the pale light. "I thought power meant seeing everything," he said. His voice was low, stripped of command. "You saw the person everyone else had decided was gone." He placed the mansion's security credentials and medical trust documents on the console. They gave Amara independent authority over Sophia's care, protected access to the recordings, and funding for her legal petition to restore the nursing license Vale had helped destroy. But Amara did not touch them until Sophia struck the spoon once and pointed to her. Her choice. Only then did Amara sign. The cuffs closed around Luca's wrists with a quiet steel click. He flinched at the sound, not from pain, but when Sophia rolled forward and pressed her forehead against his bound hands. Amara stood beside them, neither pleading with the agents nor promising an easy future. She simply kept the cameras running as Luca was escorted into the rain. Months later, formal dismissal papers for Amara's charges lay framed beside her reinstated nursing license. Sophia, awake and unrestrained, used an adaptive communication tablet while keeping the scratched silver spoon on her desk. Vale awaited trial, the stolen funds had been placed under federal control, and Luca faced judgment without asking that the record be hidden. The last mansion camera was removed at Sophia's request. Amara held the ladder while Sophia pressed the switch that darkened its lens. What Luca had finally seen was not disobedience, pity, or a maid exceeding her place, it was a woman restoring another woman's right to choose, and that day, even a man built on fear learned what dignity looks like.